Hey guys, I'm Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my July reading wrap-up, but very differently. I have a problem with reading wrap-ups, recent reads. By the time I get to them, I have forgotten details about the books, all kinds of things. There's so many that I feel like I'm rushing, trying to film it all at once, and with my crazy life and my strange filming schedule that I have to do, it's not very practical sometimes for me to sit down and do like a 30 or 40-minute video because I just don't have the time. I have decided to try a version of a reading wrap-up that I've seen Chantel do, which is where she reads a certain amount of books and then she films a clip and then she puts it all together as a full wrap-up. So I'm going to be trying that. It's kind of like a vlog style. So I'm going to be trying that for the month of July, and if it works out really well, I'll probably keep doing that for my reading wrap-ups. So yeah, we are gonna try that, and as always, all the reviews of these books on my Goodreads reviews will be linked down in the description, so if you want further content details, further thoughts, I may not mention in these videos, even with this more updated format. You can check them all out down there, do your further research, so on and so forth. And yes, my hair is not down today because it is bloody hot out there and I am not frying to death doing this clip. So we're just going to start with the few books I have already finished for the first week of July. And the first one is Andersen's Fairy Tales by Hans Christian Andersen. This is just a collection of, I thought it was only 4 stories. There's actually more than that. There's 10. There's 10? Really? Yep, okay. There's 10. There's 10 of his fairy tales in here. This is the only one that I do not have a Goodreads review down below because I couldn't find it on Goodreads. Because just Andersen's Fairy Tales, there were like 2,000 editions, and for the first few that I skimmed, I couldn't find this version, so we're skipping it. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. It definitely has an interesting style of writing. Some of the stories I was just kind of like, what was the point of this? But I did actually quite enjoy seeing the originals of like The Little Mermaid and The Snow Queen and stuff, because with The Little Mermaid, I pretty much have only known the Disney animated version, but I know that's not an accurate version because it's a retelling. So reading the original version, just seeing how it ends, it's kind of a tragic ending, but it's also kind of hopeful too. I was a little surprised by that. But yeah, seeing different fairy tales, their original forms and stuff like that was very interesting. I really like the cover of this edition. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Give it 4 stars. The second book I finished, I actually started in June, but I finished it in July, and that is Courage by Molly Evangeline. This is the second book in the McKillian trilogy. It is Christian young adult fantasy, non-magical, though there are fantasy-like creatures that she has made up, plus also like elves and dragons and stuff like that, but there's no magic. And I can't really say much about this because it's the second book in a trilogy. You will have heard me talking about the first book, Truth, in my June reading wrap-up, which I will link down in the description in case you missed it. This book is much better than the first book. The first book was very slow. It had a lot of draggy parts, had a lot of repetitiveness, of like introducing characters, introducing McKillian to said characters, and then there were like descriptions of places that I was bored with. But this book definitely cut down on that. We didn't have the repetitiveness of like characters being introduced and long descriptions of places because basically we knew where we were. But even in the new places, we didn't have long drawn out descriptions that started making my eyes glaze over. So that was helpful. I definitely like this better. The battle scenes at the end, like, this girl knows how to write battle scenes. If you don't know, Molly Evangeline is a pen name, another pen name for J.L. Knight, who wrote the Iliad Chronicles. The McKillian trilogy is one of her earlier series. It definitely shows, because she definitely has a better grasp on storytelling and characterizations and stuff like that by the time she wrote Iliad. But yeah, it's interesting seeing where she started because it's definitely, she has the same style of writing, and her battle scenes are amazing. Probably the last third of the book or so, I was totally invested. I was like really anxious for like what our characters were going through and stuff like that. I will say I am not connected to any of these characters though, which is a bummer, because none of them have really any defining characteristics from each other. They're all kind of the same. Some of them beyond like their names. I really don't know their personalities because they're good characters, but also like they don't really have much personality, each of them. So yeah, I'm not really connected to any of them. They're still good characters. But I just don't care. I was invested in like what was going on to a certain degree, at least with the battle scenes and stuff, but also at the same time it's like I didn't connect with the characters personally enough to like be really invested, even though I was invested. It was a strange mix. I will say the plot of this one is pretty much the same as the first book with some variations, which was very interesting because it was literally like we start here, we end here. And it was the kind of that same, and then we go to a few places in between. And it was kind of the same in that way as the first book, which was very interesting, very odd. Thought that was surprising, but it didn't take away my enjoyment of the book. But yeah, my lack of connection to the characters, the same-ish type of plot, stuff like that, and the lack of, like, aside from the stuff that they were going through at the very end with the final battle, I found kind of a lack of conflict within characters. It's like, okay, sure, they would have trust issues with Elam, who is God in this story. Same as the Iliana Chronicles, funnily enough. And but it was very, I don't want to say shallow because that is not the right word, but it didn't go beyond the depth of they needed to pray and they had a few doubts, but then like by the next paragraph they were over their doubts. So lack of connection on my part to the characters, which is why I dropped it to a 3-star rather than a 4. Even though the writing was much better than the first book, I still only gave it 3 stars because I was pretty much only really invested the last third of the book. So yeah, but that cliffhanger is mean. This does end on a cliffhanger on what happens to a certain character. So if you care about that character, or just even if you don't, because I couldn't say I cared per se about the character, but I was still invested enough. And the cliffhanger is mean, totally mean. So I just jumped immediately into the third book, which I will be talking about probably in the next clip. So yeah, 3 stars. Still enjoy this series. I would recommend it, especially if if you have teens in your life or you yourself are a teen. I would have loved this series as a teenager. So I think, and it is young adult, so that is good. It fits the age demographic and target audience she was going for. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it for that. Even probably older middle grade readers could probably read this and be okay. So yeah, especially if they've been reading like other type fantasy books, because it's pretty much just the violence that would be an issue. Next book I finished is a comic, and that is Marvel Adventures, The Avengers, The Dream Team. This is like volume 4 in the series, the Marvel Adventures series. And this is just following more adventures of the Avengers group, which in this volume the group is Captain America, Storm, Iron Man, the Hulk, Giant Girl, Wolverine, and Spider-Man. So it kind of has some of the two of the members of the X-Men, and then just the rest of our Avengers. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. There were a lot of funny parts. I didn't find it as amusing as the first volume I read back in May, which was weirder and wilder, but yeah, there's still quite a few funny parts. The team dynamics are just fun because you can just tell they're good friends and a good family, and I really enjoyed this one. I always enjoy a good time with these characters and just their weird shenanigans they get on, because none of the stories like follow each other chronologically that I know of, but yeah, I just really like their dynamic. We got to go to Asgard in one of these stories, so we saw Thor, and yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. And then there was like one part where they're like they're trying to figure out why one weird thing is happening, and Tony's response is, well, it's Thursday. Weird things always happen on Thursday. Everybody kind of looks at me. He's like, well, it's always been like that ever since I joined the Avengers. So yeah, I just thought that was funny. So yeah, really enjoyed this one. Gave it 4 stars. And the last book I have to talk about for this clip, I literally just finished probably about a half hour ago. That book is Faith, Hope, and Love Collection, Volume 2 by Michaela Bush. This is a Christian contemporary romance for the most part. This is a sequel to her Faith, Hope, and Love Collection Volume 1, which is a trilogy. I will put the cover up here so you guys can see what it looks like. But yeah, that is a trilogy of novels that she wrote. They were like her very first books. In this edition, it's a bind up. They did used to be separate, but she republished them as a bind up. She kind of did some tweaking to especially book 1, but also the other 2 books as well, to kind of like clean them up a bit, since they were her first books, and the first one especially had a few like grammatical errors, plot errors, stuff like that, but she fixed it up and republished it as a bind up. And yeah, this is the sequel to that. It's much shorter. It's just a collection of short stories following these main characters after the events of the original trilogy, and I really like this. There's very few contemporary books, as Christian contemporary, just any contemporary books that I can read, but one of the authors I will always read everything she writes, I don't care what it is Michaela's. And she writes contemporary in a way that I really like, because contemporary is so not my genre. Contemporary and historical, those are the 2 that are really not my genre, but if I can find decent books in them that I connect with personally, I will still read them. It's just not something you're gonna see me gravitate towards much. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. A couple of the stories made me tear up. One of them made me cry, like, how dare you, Michaela, you made me cry. And I don't really cry over books much, so, you know. But I mean that in total jest, of course. But yes, I really like this. It's just different short stories following different characters, and really, really like this. My main favorite couple in this series as a whole is Lucy and Spencer. They're pretty much the point of view characters throughout the first 3 books of the series, plus this one, but we get also other characters as well, but they're definitely my favorites, if anyone else reads them and is curious to know that. So yeah, and I gave this one 5 stars. I don't know if I said that, but yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. It's amazing. Really, really highly recommend it, especially if you like Christian contemporary romance. They're really good. There are some like vague triggers, not so much in this book, but in the first books, about like veteran PTSD. A character deals with alcohol addiction. Another character deals with like a past domestic violence issues, though that is never described. It's more just her having the trauma from that. And so there's some triggers for the series. It's all very mild. So yeah, just look into that for the first book, especially this one, of course, mentions some of those things, but it's really just things about their life, so it's just little short stories, so it doesn't really go into it as much as the novels do. So yeah, highly recommend this series, especially if you like Christian contemporary. Okay, that is all for this clip. I will see you guys in the next one. So I read a few more books, so I got another update for you guys. I forgot to mention that the Faith, Hope, and Love Collection Volume 2 I also used for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge for the short story collection, which was the prompt for July. So I forgot to mention that, so I'm going to try to remember to mention all the readathon prompts that any of these books fall into, because I'm also participating in the Beaches and Books readathon. I think that's what it's called. So yeah, I'm gonna be trying to keep up with that, and so yeah. Anyways, the next 2 books that I have finished, I finished Trust, which is by Molly Evangeline, which is the 3rd and final book in the Bacillion trilogy. This is Christian young adult fantasy. I liked this one. I gave it 3 stars as well. I gave the whole series 3 stars. Definitely, I can't really say pretty much anything about the plot of this one, because it would be spoilers for the first 2 books, obviously. So, yeah, I just know this one takes place, I think it's a year after the events of book 2. So, yeah, and it is actually a different plot line than the first 2 books. I was very invested in the plot line, like the danger everybody was in, but I still wasn't attached to any of the characters, which is very strange. I don't usually have that in books. Usually I'm like attached to the characters, so then I care about what's happening in the plot, and I don't know what's happening with my hair here. Like, seriously? What is this? Okay, if it's sticking up, I apologize. It doesn't want to behave. Anyways, back to the book. But yeah, the plot of this one was like very much like I was zeroed in, like, okay, I was like kind of like nervous with what would happen to them and stuff like that, but I still didn't care about them personally. So it's a very strange thing. So I read it pretty quickly. I think it's like I don't know if it's shorter than the first book, but I think it's around the same length. Courage is definitely the longest book in the series. But yeah, there was a ton of stuff happening in that one, so yeah. But this author definitely knows how to write her tension and her fight scenes, and just everything around this situation was very intense. And yeah, so I enjoyed it for that, and I'm glad everybody got a happy ending, at least of a sort. So yeah, I gave that one 3 stars. And then I read Captivated, which is a short story, like, epilogue of a sort, that follows after the end of Trust. It's like several years later, like many years later. I forget how many years exactly, but yeah. And yeah, it follows a side character. It's like 24 pages. It's a short story. I can't really say much more than that about it. I thought it was good. So, yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I really don't have much more to say about it. I mean, I can't say much more anyways, but yeah, it was sweet, and I really did like seeing where everybody had ended up and after the whole events of the trilogy, but yeah, gave it 3 stars. Okay, so the next few books I read, these were like Marvel chapter books that I just randomly found on my library's website. The first one I read was Iron Man: Invasion of the Space Phantoms. I gave this one 3 stars. Pretty much we follow Iron Man. Something is going wrong with an invention of his that S.H.I.E.L.D. is using, for whatever reason. It's actually not specified what, S.H.I.E.L.D. was using it for. But anyways, it doesn't really matter because it got hijacked. 2 of his teammates go missing, so he has to go try to find them, shut down this machine that has gone rogue, and he has to learn to, like, let his friends actually help him. So, you know, it was nice seeing him, Tony, like, actually admit that he needed help and then accepting everybody's help. I'm always shocked in these stories, like the other comics, these types of stories, the animated TV series, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, things like that, where Tony's actually nice to Captain America. It's I always get caught off guard by that. I know it's more canon in like the comics and stuff that they're actually friends and you can tell, but I'm so used to like the MCU version where Tony is just, most of the time he's just flat out mean to Steve most of the time. So I'm always caught off guard when he's actually nice to him and like listens to his opinions and actually considers him a friend, because this may be a controversial opinion, but I don't really see the MCU versions, which are the live-action versions of Captain America and Iron Man, as friends, so to speak, mainly because I actually don't see Tony being friends with many of the Avengers except maybe Bruce. Most of the time, he treats them all like dirt, most of the time. Cap especially, Tony has a problem with treating like dirt, so I'm always shocked. So in those versions, I always see it very hard as them being friends, because I'm kind of like, Tony acts like he hates Steve's guts most of the time, so I don't know. Like, on Steve's end, yeah, I could probably see him, like, considering Tony a friend or wanting to be friends, but Tony is a jerk. So it was nice in this book that he wasn't a jerk. Gave this book 3 stars. It was just okay, and I also used it for the Beaches and Books readathon. I used it for the prompt Ocean, which is an underwater setting. Now, I didn't watch Katie's original video. I did watch Celestia's video, though, of announcing it. She did specify that Katie had mentioned that you could use just an underwater scene. It doesn't have to be fully set underwater, and I found a scene where this would actually work, because I was wondering, like, do I have any books that are underwater? Like, no. But, this book actually has a scene where Iron Man goes briefly underwater and deals with, like, robot sharks, and here's even an illustration to demonstrate that. So yeah, I thought that was interesting, so I used it for that prompt. So yeah, maybe that's cheating. I don't really care. Used a couple other prompts for the Beaches and Books tag already, so I thought I'd go over those real quick before I go into the next book. For Starfish, which was a book you think will be 5 stars, I used the Faith, Hope, and Love Collection, Volume 2. Then I have another one I'm going to be talking about later. And then for Beach Party, which was a book about friendship, I used Avengers: The Dream Team. I used that one for that because the Avengers in that comic do act like friends. For the next book I read, which is another Marvel chapter book, I read Ms. Marvel's Fists of Fury. This one, Ms. Marvel is not a character I know much about. I think she's like a teenage superhero. She can elongate her body and her arms and stuff, so like she can extend her legs and her arms and stuff. So I don't really know much about the character, though, but anyways, we're following Kamala, who is Ms. Marvel, and she's having a problem balancing, like, school, friends, and her social life and stuff like that, with also being Ms. Marvel, because she's kind of like Spider-Man, and she's keeping her identity secret. But anyways, these, like, half-bird people start causing problems in the city, and then she runs across Thor, from the Avengers. He was sent by the Avengers to check out this weird bird phenomenon. They team up to figure out what's going on. I actually liked this one. This one was written really well. You know, I could actually feel what was going on with Kamala and, like, her struggle of trying to balance everything. Thor is very on par, which is kind of surprising sometimes, because sometimes Thor is, like, written as, like, a dummy, or, like, too serious or too goofy, which is partially why I hate Ragnarok, because they made him too much of an idiot. But anyways, this was definitely on par with how I see Thor, of just, like, you know, he's clearly from somewhere else, but he clearly also likes Earth and learns Earth terms and stuff like that. So, and yeah, his dynamic with Kamala actually worked really well. Yeah, I really liked that, and how he was able to help her out and, like, help her to realize some things about the way she's been acting and stuff. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. So yeah, I also like in these, I didn't mention it in the Iron Man one, but sometimes they change the font in certain ways. Like when Thor talks, it's always this kind of like fantasy-ish type scrawl, and they sometimes use the pictures, the illustrations and stuff for the storyline, like, see, the texting is with the phone and stuff. Sometimes it makes it hard to read, because sometimes you're not quite sure where things go. This one was the least confusing, because it pretty much just followed linear writing style, with the occasional, like, using the phone or using a text bubble, which I can't find. Yeah, where I see, like, her friends talking here, so they use that as the he said type thing. So yeah, I like that. It's very interesting. Sometimes it's confusing. Like I said, the Iron Man one was more confusing than this one. So yeah, I gave that one 4 stars. And then I read the last one that I had, which was Captain America: The Tomorrow Army. This is one of the ones where the text and stuff is sometimes a little confusing as to where things are going and stuff like that. But yeah, after a bit of reading it with the others, I figured it out for this one. And in this one, Steve's still trying to get used to modern day life and stuff like that. So anyway, in the midst of him trying to figure all that out, they find out that Hydra is still around. This is kind of funny. It's almost like a younger reimagining of what the Winter Soldier could be, which I found very interesting. But anyways, they find out Hydra still exists, obviously, and yeah, so Steve is obviously very upset about that, but they're using more technology. He's just gonna have to learn to adjust to more modern society. So yeah, it's just his struggle with that. I understand his struggle completely. Like, I was born in this modern world, but technology kind of freaks me out. I have problems with technology as a general whole, so yeah, so I understand him on that level and stuff like that. Like, why can't things just be simpler and not revolve around tech so much? But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Like I said, it's kind of like a different version of Winter Soldier without the Winter Soldier, obviously, because like both Sam and Natasha are in here helping him out. Not as much as I thought it would be from the way the back says it. The very beginning of this book, probably the very first few, I would probably say the first 3 to 4 chapters is very rough. It feels very kind of stiff and disjointed. So yeah, I'm not quite sure. I don't know if the author was just trying to get into how to write the story and stuff like that. It just felt very stilted. At first for like the first 3 to 4 chapters, but then after that, after Steve confronts Hydra and things to follow after that, it flows much better, and it feels like a more cohesive story. So I'm not quite sure what happened in those first few chapters. It just felt a little stiff. So I'm not sure about that, but yeah, I really did enjoy this one. I gave this one 4 stars as well, and I used this for the seashells prompt, which is to get a library book. So, and this is a library book. So I used this one for that prompt. And yeah, those are all my updates for now. I have some books to update you guys on. Sadly, 2 of them are DNFs. So yeah, we'll just get into those. The first one is the DNF, that is Demon Slayer Volume 6. I am officially DNFing this series. I never gave it higher than like a 3.5 star anyways, this series. And I gave it a fair shot, but it's really just getting too violent for me, and there's too much screaming. Like, more than one of these characters, all they communicate with screaming. It's really grating on me, and I'm not that invested in the story. Even though I do like the main character, Tanjiro, I'm not that invested to keep going. If anything, I'll just look up spoilers online to see how it ends, because the series is complete. But I don't care. I don't care enough to keep reading when it's only subpar with an occasional really good nugget here and there, and yeah, I just don't care. So I DNF'd this series officially, and the next one I DNF'd, I don't even fully know what. That is Martin's Anointed by Catherine McKee. This is the 3rd book in the Martin's Mark series. This is Christian non-magical fantasy, and there's nothing wrong with this book. I just don't care. Of this series, I really like the first book, which is Martin's Mark. It's like an adventure. Characters are on the run. They're trying not to get captured by pirates. There's all kinds of things in that book, and I really love it. The characters had great development, but the next couple of books, which is Martin's Heir, and then this one, Martin's Anointed, it's more focused on, like, the court politics and the intrigue and stuff. Yes, a character is trying to, like, what can I say without spoiling it? Like, they're trying to take back something, so yes, they're off on a mission with a bunch of other people, but I got to, like, page 82, which was, like, roughly this much through the book, and nothing was happening. One of the characters is, like, she fell in love with someone else, but then she had, like, a suitor before, so he's, like, still in love with her and stuff like that, and then so she's trying to, like, let him down nicely, but at the same time, it's like she has to still work with him, so there's that dynamic. I don't care for that. I just didn't care for much of this. It feels like ever since book 1, none of the characters have really had much of a character development either. It's kind of like they got to that point at the very end of book 1, and then they just never progressed past it. Like, I liked the second book well enough, and this one's okay. I mean, I skimmed the end, and I like how it ended and stuff, but there's also one other thing with Shirlani, who is the main princess character. There's something that goes on with her near the end that I'm not a fan of. Also, it doesn't help that this author has released this book, the 3rd book, in 2019, and there's supposed to be one more. There's supposed to be a 4th and final book. I have heard nothing about it. I've tried looking online, tried looking on her website and stuff like that. It's like radio silence. It's like she almost doesn't exist. The last post I ever saw from her on something was like September of last year, which is fine. But at the same time, it's like, I'm also hesitant to want to even finish it, because then I'll want to know how it ends, but there's no end in sight. And that was like 5 to 6 years ago. And there's no indication that the ending is coming anytime soon. There's no indication that's coming at all. And I don't know, I just don't want to get invested in it because it doesn't seem to have an ending. And yeah, that's kind of disappointing. And I don't know, it just for some bizarre reason didn't interest me. And I really don't know why. So yeah, because this is my book, so I don't know if I'm going to keep this or not. For now, it's kind of sitting on a pile with the second book, actually, and a couple others that I'm kind of like, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep these or not. If anything, even if I did unhaul these and the 4th book miraculously got published, I would just repurchase these as ebooks. Because, yes, out of the whole series, the only one I would technically reread would be the first one, because I really like the first one. And you can technically read that as a standalone. There are some, like, things that are, like, unresolved then and stuff like that, but technically the whole thing is unresolved because there's no ending. So either way, whether you read all 3 books or you just read the first one, you're going to be left with some unresolved things. But then with the first book, I would think you could then just come up with your own ending, considering the series doesn't have an ending at this point in time. So yeah, still still a good series. I would definitely still recommend checking it out, especially if you don't mind more of the court intrigue and politics and stuff in the second and third books. Unfortunately, I do not really like that very much. I have to have it very minimally. So, and these 2 books, it's not very minimal. So, yeah. But if you don't mind that or you like that, I would say this would be a good series. But do keep in mind, as of now, when I'm filming this, and as of now of this year, there is no end in sight. So, do keep that in mind. I started another manga series because, yeah, I was interested in trying the anime, but then I figured, hey, I'll try the manga first, and, you know, before I get involved in an anime and realize there's stuff in it that I don't care for or whatever, and that is My Hero Academia. And, I wasn't... Okay, let me tell you what it's about first. This is basically about our main character here. I'm not 100% sure how to say his name. It is Izuku Midoriya, possibly. He does have a name that he ends up going by as his superhero handle later on, which is Deku. I'm just going to call him Deku because it's easier to say. Anyways, we follow him. He wants to be a superhero badly because, like, 80% of the world now have what they call quirks, where people, which is basically superpowers, that basically people just have started manifesting superpowers, and it's like the norm now, that superheroes, supervillains, stuff like that, it exists. Most of the world has it. Even if you're not a superhero full-time, you can just have, like, minor powers and stuff like that. Unfortunately, Deku, he really wants to be a hero. Unfortunately, he was born without a quirk, so he's just like a normal human. He's, like, picked on school about it, but he tries to keep up this optimistic attitude that he can be like his hero, All Might, who is, like, one of the biggest top-name superheroes ever. But then something happens. There's a couple of extenuating circumstances where Deku meets All Might, and then something happens, and then All Might tells him, you have what it takes to be your hero. I'm going to gift you my power, and I'm going to train you how to do it, so then you can then try to get into the superhero and then you can get into the superhero academy where you will train to be a professional superhero. And so starts Deku's journey on becoming a hero. I actually really enjoyed this. Deku's a very positive character. He's definitely just going to go for his dreams. Even before he gets a power, he wants to just be a hero. He wants to help people, and he just has this burning desire to help people. No matter what, even if they're totally mean to him, like, he keeps trying to help this bully. I think there's more to that storyline than what we got in the first volume, but this bully at school who's constantly picking him, he has a quirk, he has a power, it's like firepower or something, and he picks on Deku constantly, but even then, Deku tries to be really nice to him, tries to help him, and he, like, you know, if that person's in trouble, he's not going to hesitate to go help him, and I admire that. All Might is funny. He just says these things that is just, like, that's just funny. He's a very amusing personality, and he really believes in Deku, so I really like that he's doing this mentorship role of training this basically this scrawny little kid who doesn't have, you know, any talent whatsoever, and he's just like, but you've got the heart for it, so I'm going to train you. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. We get to meet several other characters by the end of this, so yeah, I'm very curious to continue this and see where this story goes. And I gave this one 4 stars. And then also the last one I want to talk about, at least in this clip, is The Stolen Kingdom by Bethany Atazda. I think that's how you say her last name. I apologize if that's incorrect. I had the ebook of this one, and I read it. I finished it yesterday, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. It is a clean fairy tale retelling. It's a very loose retelling of Aladdin called Princess Ari. She has a gift, a genie gift, which the jinn, I think they're genies. I think that's what that is. It's a different word for genie. Anyway, she has the gift. She can read people's minds, or, like, read their thoughts and stuff like that. She doesn't really want this gift, though, because in the kingdoms, if you have a gift, a genie gift, and you're a woman, it will get removed. You're, like, seen as a terrible person, and they will remove it from you, and yeah, that's not fun. So she has that problem, and then this other king from this other kingdom comes in and basically uses his gift because men are allowed to keep their Ginny gifts if they have any. He abuses his gift to try to coerce her into marrying him. So and so he can steal her kingdom. So her only way out that she can see is for her to run away. Well, I mean, you know, it's a pretty plausible explanation. I mean, he can't, if he wants to get the kingdom by marriage, well, he can't really marry her if she's not there. So she runs away, and then through a series of circumstances, she lands in with a group of thieves led by Caden, and they're trying to find a Ginny. And she realizes that if they find this Ginny, she may be able to ask the Ginny to remove her gift, and then she can just go home as a normal person and somehow get rid of the king who's trying to get rid of her or take over her kingdom. And then things ensue from there. It has a very light, easy reading style. I flew through it in a few days. There were some days I didn't read it. So, you know, on Goodreads, it's like, took me 4 days to read. Was like, well, I didn't read it for like 2 of them, but you know, whatever. It was really fun. I liked Princess Ari. I liked Caden. The Band of Thieves. Some of them I don't really have an opinion on the thieves. They were okay. I did enjoy them. I liked how tight-knit most of them were. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. Really liked Caden. He's a really great character. And like his difficulties with people with gifts and stuff like that. Yeah, he was a very sympathetic character. So was Ari. She wasn't like an annoying, strong female character, but she did have a lot of strength. And Gideon. I really liked Gideon. Yeah, I'm not going to say who he is because it's not really specified and it could be potentially considered a spoiler, but I really liked him. He kind of, at first I was kind of like, what kind of a character are you going to be? But then I warmed up to him. I really like him. So yeah, and as for fairy tale retelling, extremely loose Aladdin retelling. Like if you blink and miss it and there's no lamp, it's literally just its own fantasy story. Which leads me to, this story is not like normal fairy tale retelling series where like you can read one, it's a done deal. No, this is like a regular fantasy series where some things in the main first book have been resolved, but the main plot has not been. The romance has not been. Things are kind of left at loose ends at the end of book 1, so you will need to read the rest of the books to find out what happens. Which I plan on doing because I was kind of like, wait, what? This is how we're ending? So yeah, I was very surprised by that, so I just want to put that out there for other people who are like me and maybe thought this would be like a that type of a fairy tale retelling with maybe just overarching plot, but like the romance would be resolved and stuff like that. It's not. So keep that in mind if you do read this series, but it's really good. I really love the cover too. It's really pretty. I'm very interested to check out the next one, which is a very loose, I think probably going to be the same very loose retelling of The Little Mermaid. So very interested to see where that goes, and yeah, I really enjoyed this book. So I read a few more books, so I'm just going to go over the one that I can't really talk too much about because it's going further into the series. That is My Hero Academia. I've read volumes 2, 3, and 4. I'm really enjoying this series so far. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of action in here, and this one's, we start with like a training exercise, but then we like go into like supervillains start attacking, and it's just like, whoa, okay, things just happen, just keep happening. And then we have like, starting in this one, obviously the supervillains are still attacking, but then later on we have like a sports festival that goes mostly into this one, and actually it's not even done yet. I think it ends in the 5th volume, which I haven't read yet, but I'm really enjoying this. There's a lot of different characters. That is my main hang up with this one, is that there's so many different characters. It's giving me a hard time keeping up with everybody, but I'm assuming by the time I get to near the end of the series, I will have everybody somewhat straight. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this. Deku is definitely a very inspiring character. I'm really liking a lot of these other characters. There's also kind of a new guy who's, where is he? This guy here. I'm not quite sure how to say his name, so I'm not going to try, but he kind of has a similar, I'm feeling like a similar backstory to Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, the TV series, and I don't know, I'm really starting to like him. He definitely has something about him that I'm definitely drawn to, but yeah, just the supervillain attack especially was really intense, and like there were like different people who were teamed up together, and it's just, it was really intense. I was just like, okay, wow, we're going there. And yeah, I really like I'm starting to also like one of the teachers. His superhero name is Eraserhead. It's kind of an interesting name, but I'm starting to like him. At first, in the first volume, I was just kind of like, he's an interesting character, but I'm starting to grow very fond of him. So yeah, and I keep forgetting also to mention which of these books I'm using for the Beaches and Books readathon. So this one, My Hero Academia 4, I used for the Beach Ball prompt, which is a book about sports, because we're going with a sports festival. And for the ones I mentioned in the last clip that I forgot to mention which prompts I was using them for, My Hero Academia Volume 1, I did for Sunshine, which was a book with a yellow cover, because that one has an extremely yellow cover. And the other one was Sandcastle, a book with royalty or a castle on the cover, and I went with The Stolen Kingdom for this one, because royalty, we're dealing with princesses and all kinds of things, and the previous editions of these did have castles on the cover. The next book I also wanted to talk about is a book that I also used for the Beaches and Books readathon for Waves, a book that made waves in the community. Since I primarily read indie books, this one was a little difficult for me, but a lot of my friends have read recently, and we're talking about Assassin of Fire and Sacrifice by Mary Meckham, and I recently got the ebook, so I read this one, and I included it for this prompt, and I'm not quite sure how to describe this one. This is part of the Sacrificial Hearts series, I think that's what it's called, which is another multi-author type series, and this one has like phoenix shifters in it, has romance. Basically, the very, very vague premise of it is Azora, our main character, she's like an assassin for this kingdom, and she basically gets, she volunteers to go for this, like, arranged marriage, which basically will end the war between these two kingdoms they've been fighting for years, but she's going with the intent of she will eventually assassinate her husband. That's gonna start some very interesting marital conversations. Oh, why are you here again? I thought we were gonna have a relationship. Now I'm here to kill you. That doesn't really sound like a great start to your relationship. But anyways, so yeah, she goes there. There's tons of banter between the two, tons of banter between Azora and her friends, and she starts to gradually change her mind about the prince, and maybe he's not so bad after all, and just things go from there. And yeah, I can't say much more because honestly, the back cover doesn't give you much more, and also, I think it's better to go in almost somewhat blind, because like the twists and turns in this book were insane. I was really surprised and caught off guard by a few of them. One of them I even didn't guess ahead of time. I only like started making connections when I was forced to, stop reading and go to the grocery store and had to have errands. So I was just sitting there in the car thinking about this. So yeah, otherwise I probably would have just read right through it. I probably would have thought about it at some point, but then I was just like, wait a minute. It's probably this and this and this, which, if I have enough time to just sit there and think about a book, I probably start putting the connections together if I don't immediately, because I'm very good at that. Either that's because I've read too much, or I'm also an author, so I know about these things. So I don't know which one it is. Maybe it's both. Anyways, but yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars. And also just the relationship between Azora and Turquin, I believe is how you say the main guy's name. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. I really liked it. They just had a connection, and I enjoyed seeing them grow closer to each other. It was very sweet. Especially I'll just say the thunderstorm scene. That one was really sweet. I really liked that. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this book. I don't want to say too much more because it might spoil some things. So I'm just going to move on to the next book, which is A Stolen Heart by Selena R. Gonzalez. I got an e-arc of this book from the author, so thank you very much to Selena for giving me a copy of this. And I don't know what I can say too much about this one. It's a very loose retelling of The Goose Girl. It is book 4 in the Marigold Chronicles. You do need to read book 3 first if you don't want any spoilers, because there are spoilers for book 3 and book 4. So if you want to read it in order and you want the entire story, you will need to read A Fated Quest first, because there are lots of spoilers for how that book ends and for a particular character that carries on into this one. Main character, Callista is her name, I believe that's how you say it. She's basically blackmailed into impersonating this lady who is going to court the new king of this country, and she's basically blackmailed to impersonate her and to go and assassinate him. Apparently, I read several books now where people were trying to assassinate people. Even in My Hero Academia, they were trying to kill somebody. Okay, there's an interesting twist here with that. That was not intentional. Anyways, so yeah, and so she reluctantly agrees to this because obviously she's being blackmailed. And then we are also following Valen, who is the king's general, and he's like, the king is his best friend and stuff, so he's constantly paranoid about keeping him safe. He's also half fae, so he starts noticing things are bizarre with Callista right away, and things happen from there. I can't say much more than that. Again, it would be too spoilery for both this book and for Fated Quest, but also just in general. I really enjoyed this one. Yeah, I really love these two. Callista and Valen are so cute together. It got off to a little rocky start, but you know, hey, it's fine. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. And I also used it for the Beaches and Books readathon for Flip Flops, which was a book with 2 point of views, because we do have Callista's and we have Valen's. So yeah, really enjoyed that one. And the last one I have currently read is another manga. This is a very large manga because I think this is like a special edition. And that is Sailor Moon, Volume 1. I picked this up because same as with My Hero Academia, I was interested in trying out the anime, but I was like, my library doesn't have the anime, so I will try the manga first. I really liked this. It's a magical girl, which is kind of similar to like the superhero genre, I believe. Basically, we follow our main character, Usagi. I think that's how you say her name. It's Japanese, so that could be incorrect, but yeah, Usagi. She's just a 14-year-old girl. She's kind of a slacker. She doesn't really do her homework very well. And then, you know, she likes to sleep in. She doesn't really care much about what she's doing. But one day she's late to school and she trips over this cat in the middle of just lying there in the middle of the sidewalk, and it has band-aids on its forehead, like some kids put them there or something. So she was like, oh, poor kitty, I'm really sorry I did this to you. She takes the band-aids off, and the cat has a crescent moon on her forehead, and so she's just kind of like, oh, that's weird, and she runs off to school. And then later on, this cat, who's named Luna, she shows up and she starts talking to her, which, you know, that's normal. And she basically tells Usagi that she is the guardian of this mystical silver crystal, and this princess of the Moon Kingdom, which have both gone missing, and she is the legendary guardian Sailor Moon. Needs to, like, understand her powers and band together to find the rest of these Sailor Guardians who need to protect this crystal and this princess. So basically, yeah, Usagi goes and she starts finding these girls who are also Sailor Guardians, or Sailor Scouts as they're called, and she also keeps running into this strange teenage guy who is called Tuxedo Mask, and she has this weird connection to him, and yeah, there's just a lot of stuff going on here. I will say the chapters are very kind of episodic at first, like before each one she introduces herself and stuff. I understand that's because when this was first serialized, it was like in a magazine, and like if you didn't read the previous chapters, you wouldn't have known who the characters were and stuff. So there was a bit of that. Also, Usagi herself she's a little shallow. I'm not gonna lie, she's a little shallow. But for some reason I don't know, I just like this story. I have no idea what it is about it. Obviously, there's a lot of things of each of the Sailor Scouts are attached to a certain planet or a certain moon, so they draw, like, power from it and stuff like that. So there's kind of, like, some, I guess you would call it astrology stuff. I just see it as it's magic. It's fantasy. It's like a fantasy, so it's magic, so it doesn't really bother me. The art style is also the kind of, like, older 90s style. Obviously, this was made back in the 90s. So, which isn't my favorite, because I just know that because Rurouni Kenshin was made in the 90s too, and that one had a similar art style. Which isn't my favorite, but I don't know. There's just something about this story that has just captivated me and drawn me in, and I'm not quite sure what it is, but there's like, yeah, I don't know, there's just something about this story that is making me curious to want to continue, and just really like it. And there's just something about these characters, and I don't know, and Usagi and Tuxedo Mask's, their connection and stuff, there's just something about it that it just feels, I don't know, really, it feels really wholesome, but also at the same time just very adventurous and just very, I don't know what it is. I honestly don't know what it is that I feel about this story, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. And I'm definitely looking forward to continuing the next volume. I had the second volume out. So yeah, I definitely really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars, and I can't really explain more about why I like it because I don't fully understand it. But I don't know, there's just something about this story that I really enjoy and makes me want to continue. Okay, I have one more book to talk about. And sorry if this clip is a little dark. My curtains are closed over there because I'm keeping the sun out because it is like ridiculously hot outside and I'm not letting the sunlight in. So, the last book I have to talk about is A Curse of Gems by Brittany Fisher. I love this book. This is the 7th book in her Classical Kingdom series. The majority of these you can read out of order, though, which is pretty much how I've been doing it. And this is a fairy tale retelling, Christian fantasy of the fairy tale Toads and Diamonds, or Diamonds and Toads. I think it's called either way. It's the one where the evil sister spews like snakes and toads out of her mouth whenever she talks, and then the other girl who's good spews diamonds out of her mouth, if you've never heard of that fairy tale. I've never actually read I think I read the original ones. Anyways, it doesn't matter. That's what this is a retelling of. In this one, we follow Jael, I think is how you say her name. She lives in this like really corrupt kingdom that's like walled in. Criminals from other kingdoms are constantly sent there, and yeah, it's pretty much just a cesspool of disaster and destruction and darkness. And yeah, in this kingdom also, girls are often snatched by men. They're often kidnapped, forced to marry them, things like that. So she's very distrustful of men. However, through a series of circumstances, she ends up with a curse that whenever she talks, she spews diamonds out of her mouth. However, you can probably guess, in a criminal kingdom, this is a really terrible idea. And then she gets mixed up with the royal family because the Queen Mother comes there to like take her out for reasons. And then we are also following Lucas. He is a second prince in a neighboring kingdom, and he is sent to this terrible kingdom to pay back debts that the previous, like their grandfather, the previous king of their kingdom, had amounted a lot of debts. So Lucas is sent there to send back the debt because all their previous times of doing it have failed and nobody's come back, and apparently the money has never gotten there. Through a series of events, Lucas ends up crossing paths with his mother and Jael, and he's just like, really? Why is my mother here, for one thing? And then for another, why did she drag this poor girl who's spewing diamonds out of her mouth, strangely enough, into this mess? They have to band together to survive this kingdom and get the money to the corrupt king so that Lucas's kingdom doesn't have criminals let out in them. The catch here is that Jael and Lucas have to pretend they're betrothed in order to protect Jael from getting kidnapped from all these unsavory men. So, adventure and chaos ensued, and I love this book. I mean, it's Brittany Fisher. Of course I loved it. It's kind of hard to put into words. This one, I really liked it. I gave it 5 stars. Really loved Jael and Lucas. Their characters, their character arcs, the things they go through just really spoke to me, really touched me. I really like the way Brittany Fisher crafts her characters and character arcs. They feel extremely real. The romance is the same way. It's not always fluffy and sweet, like some romances in like fairy tale retellings especially are, but this is like very real, very raw. You have opposite people with their own problems and baggage trying to come together or not, and they end up together for whatever reason, and it's messy. It doesn't always work, and well, sometimes that leaves me feeling a little bit like, I don't know, a little different than when I read other type of fairy tale retellings or romances or whatever. I do appreciate the realness of it, and I do always end up like thinking long about it and then just really enjoying how she writes it. She writes it very uniquely, but still very well done, but it's still swoony at the same time. And she always writes happily ever afters, which I questioned at the end of this book. The last chapter before the epilogue, I was questioning. I was just like, what the heck is going on here? I do not like where this is going. Yeah, so I nearly was like, what is going on right here? But it does end happily. So, and she writes happily ever afters for all of her romances in her books. So I knew that, and that was the only thing keeping me from throwing and the fact that it was a Kindle, so I didn't want to throw my Kindle. But it literally kept me from throwing the book because I was like, what is going on here? So anyways, you'll have a stress-induced almost heart attack at the end of that book. Anyways, yeah, I really enjoyed that. Lucas's mother did drive me nuts. I will say that, because she kind of reminds me of somebody in my life, and I pitied poor Lucas the entire time he had to deal with her. It's just like, yes, Lucas, I totally get this understanding, but I really love the adventure and the dangerous part of it, and just, like, this kingdom, she is really interesting with, like, the different factions inside this, like, corrupt kingdom and the darkness and stuff like that. This is also Christian fantasy. Her previous Classical Kingdoms books, which I've, the ones that I've read anyways, the faith content has been pretty light so far, but this one had more, like, blatant Christian allegory and Christian content. So if you like more faith content in your books, and if you've read her previous books in this series and you were kind of like, this doesn't have enough in it, this one definitely has more. I did see several reviews where a lot of people didn't like that. I thought it fit for the story, so I liked it just fine. And it made perfect sense for what Jiao and Lucas were going through, and I really enjoyed it, so I thought it fit the story, even if it was a little bit more than her previous books. So keep that in mind. If you like more faith content, you might like this one more than some of her other ones where it's very light. We also get cameos from other characters from her other books, like we see Everard and Isa from the first 3 books of the series. We also see Elena from Cinder, Stars, and Glass Slippers, which I was surprised with. I didn't expect that cameo, and this chronologically, this book actually comes chronologically before Cinder, Stars, and Glass Slippers, even though that book is the 6th book of the series. So that was interesting to see that not all of these are written in chronological order, or at least, chronologically as in what's happening with the kingdoms and stuff like that. So I thought that was very interesting. This also has characters in it from, I think it's the 5th book, which is Silent Mermaid. So we kind of see the end romance result between the 2 main characters from that book in this book. So sort of spoilers there, but also since this author writes happily ever afters, I didn't really consider it a spoiler, because, you would know even if you read Silent Mermaid first, or after this one, that they would end up together anyways. So a few little, like, spoilers for that, but I didn't mind it. And yeah, I just really, really enjoyed this book. It made me think a lot, and yeah, I had to read the epilogue twice. I mean, there was that whole almost had a heart attack inducing thing beforehand, so I had to read it again just to be like, this is how it's set in stone. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this book. I also used it for the last 3 prompts of the Beaches and Books readathon. So the first one was Lifeguard, which is a book I saved for later. This book I actually did start to read last year. However, I got like 29% in, and then I had to put it down because at the time I was trying to read too many books at once, and then I was just getting overwhelmed. So I put it down, and I never picked it back up, even though I was enjoying it. So yeah, so this time I just picked it up, read through what I'd already read, because obviously I was not going to remember what was going on. And then I just continued it and finished it, which I'm really glad I did, because I really needed this book at this time in my life. So yeah, I don't know if it would have had as much an impact on me last year if I had read it when I was trying to. But yeah, so I used it for that prompt. Then I also used it for Rainy Day, which was read a book during a rainstorm. Where I live, we don't often get rain in July, so I was pretty much chalking this prompt up as like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this one. But it actually did rain a little bit the day I finished this book. So yeah, I really like that. I reread the epilogue again while it was raining outside. It was very lovely. And the last prompt I used it for was Boardwalk, which is set in a beach town. Now, this is probably more aimed at, like, contemporary books where they're actually set at a beach town, but both of these kingdoms, Lucas's kingdom and the corrupt kingdom that they're in, both border the sea. We see a lot of, like, mermaids and stuff. They're even on ships occasionally. Lucas is an admiral in his kingdom's navy, or he's a captain. He's some important person in the kingdom's navy. Anyways, I think he's an admiral. Whatever. I don't remember details like that. Anyways, so it's set in beachy kingdoms. So I put it for that one as well. So yes, so I finished the entire bingo board. This is the one I drew in my journal. So yeah, I finished the whole Beaches and Books readathon, which I didn't really think I would do. Those last 2 prompts, I was like, yeah, probably not gonna happen, but they did. So yay, I'm very happy. And that is it. Those are all the books I read in July. I hope you enjoy this new format. I definitely enjoy filming it more this way. I remember things better, and I like to talk more about the books this way, and I don't feel rushed. So I think I'm going to be doing my reading wrap-ups for the month like this in this vlog style from now on. But I still would love to hear your opinions anyways, guys, so let me know down below in the comments what you think of this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye!